Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today for how to balance your perm and temp desks. It's sure to be another informative session with some great takeaway from our panelists. I'm excited to be joined today by People Fusion Director and Recruitment Specialist, Sally Bartley. Hi, Sally. Hi. And founder and CEO of A Positive, Danny Marlowe. Hi, Danny. Hey. To talk through the experiences and challenges that come with managing a dual desk recruitment and finance, I should say. I can always do this. I do these webinars a lot, and there's so many screens going on, I forget to go through the slides, so bear with me. Next slide. We will then share an exclusive look at the upcoming talent pool features coming soon to JobAdder's Temp Express dashboard, built to help you manage your working temps and contractors. We will then open up for Q&A so you can ask your questions directly to the experts. Throughout the session, you can submit your questions using the questions tab on the left-hand side of the screen, which we will also answer at the end, or we'll try and answer as many as we can. The session will also be recorded, so if you miss anything and want to come back to it later, we can. So let's get into this. Let me just pick this. I didn't go full screen. That's that slide there. Thank you. So let's get into this discussion. I'm really excited because we had a bit of a pre-discussion, just the three of us last week, and we had a really lovely flowing conversation. So I'm kind of hopeful we get to that and give you guys listening some really good insights into where we started a while back with Greg and Angela, and now to what this is, which is really about how you've enabled it and now how to sort of power it up and get it working. So I don't know whether I mentioned this, but yeah, so in case you missed that first webinar, we hosted a great discussion between Greg and Angela, how we build a resilient temp business in 2023 and why having a temp desk is key to surviving an economic downturn. Critical, it's been a hot topic for a long time. You can check that webinar and it covers every business needs for a temp desk, how to start one and common traps to avoid as you're starting one. So we're seeing today's session as a continuation of that discussion and moving from that kind of initial startup phase into running a fully fledged dual desk recruitment business. So growing your dual desk, and I know Sally's got a huge amount here, and Danny will be able to help us because there's some very topical comments and subjects that you can jump in on. But let's talk about People Fusion for a second, and Sally, your journey with your agency to this point, and what's kind of worked as you've established dual desk type of working, because I know you've got both consultants working in both and consultants only doing temp. So really interested to get your thoughts on what's worked and what hasn't.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tom, and thanks for the introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm really mindful today as well that we've got great diversity in our listeners. So we've got some people that are purely perm businesses looking to think about dabbling in temps versus businesses that are temp and perm and have dedicated desks or potentially already running dual desks. People Fusion for 17 years have offered both temporary and permanent services to our clients. And I must say, and there's probably a lot of business owners and leaders online that can kind of nod their head. There's a lot of things we've tried and a lot of things we've also come full circle on. So hopefully, Tom and Danny, I can share some stories and add some context and give some ideas around what worked and what hasn't for us. I guess I'd just start by saying, you know, back 3 years ago, we did actually really move towards that model of dual desk. And that came off the, you know, with the pandemic and looking at a different sort of support structure and a different size in headcount. So we really wanted to get deep into our specializations. Areas that we found it really worked was where we did have a consultant that was really deep in a particular area. For us, though, as quite a dynamic generalist business, we really struggled to get that traction and that consultant. We realized we'd put the consultant under a lot of pressure in those fast moving temp and perm space for business support and a lot of our high volume work. So I know we'll dive deeper in that throughout the session today, but there were some really good learnings along the way.
I guess interesting from my point of view on that is as you started that journey, and you've got those consultants who might have been in the slightly more slow-moving world of perm, and you have sort of suggested, hey, there's this new world we're going to try out. What did you do? How did you, A, persuade them this is a great idea, you're going to sort of double your skill set, you're hopefully going to persuade them a bit like, hey, there's more money to be made here. There's better chance of you hitting your targets, etc. What were the kind of discussions you had? How did you?
Yeah, it's a great question. We put at the time, it was about putting and we still do this, but it was putting the candidate at the center. And at the time, we wanted to ensure that those candidates were offered both temporary, and when we talk temp, we're talking temp and contract, but temp and perm options. So it was like the cycle that we were in with the unknown brought about that change. So our consultants really trusted us as leaders to lead them through that. But what we really importantly had to do was make sure that our business had the policies in place to actually support the consultant to do both. So for example, if you're taking, you're asking them to work in a different environment around commissions, incentives, sharing talent, not handing over a temp job versus keeping it and what have you. So there's, depending on where you're up to in your journey with this, there's some of the traps that I guess to share with you where we had our key learning. As a leader, you always want to make sure that you're giving the consultant absolute opportunity to achieving both. So they're not favouring one or the other. And importantly, from a workflow perspective, they are so different. So really understanding the nuances in a perm workflow and a temp workflow. It's not an easy job for somebody running a dual desk.
No, and I guess that's why you find some people may embrace that kind of dual method and approach to working with a client. And I guess also being able to speak to the client in a way that's very different. It's both excellent from a BD perspective, right? It's great to be able to talk to a client and go, oh, hey, I'm also managing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when we talk about as a consultant, how are we really adding value to the candidate, client and the business when you are able to offer all of those services and they're the forefront of your mind because you're running a dual desk, you're thinking on the fly, you're thinking temp, contract, perm, you've got it all in mind. Now, because we've switched back to separated out desks, what we learnt during that was that we needed to keep that momentum going. So just because a person is now just purely on temp or purely on perm, how do we get that collaboration and sharing across our business? So making sure we celebrate that sharing, making sure we come together and we acknowledge the work of one another. So yeah, the key learnings there was a lot of them. For us, and so whilst we sort of persisted with that model for about 1.5 years, it wasn't wasted time. It actually made us get really laser beam focused on what our business needs, and all of our businesses will have different nuances and different reasons that things will and won't work.
Yeah. What's interesting, Danny, I realise that by all means butt in, but this is obviously the initial sort of stage of this. But I'm interested to know, if you've now gone, as you say, separate desks, and you've got your temp perm recruiter, and they're working with, say, a client. Do you pair them up? How do you say, hey, you're working with the same client, we need you to be kind of talking the same story here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, left hand needs to know what the right hand's doing. Account management calls. If there's an issue over in the temp space in, say, the finance area of one of our clients, the perm consultant is across that as well, and vice versa. So, really, and this is where it's important to map your client and candidate's journey with your business. So there are points where those two consultants are coming back together to talk about what's happening in their area of specialisation, and in that example, it's finance. Often they're quite separated out, and a role might be passed over for, that doesn't sit within their space. Think about it more as that account management and that seamless interaction for your client and for your candidate.
I love it because there's so many synergies to yes, recruitment, but the way you build product and how you have different teams working things, and you need to make sure people's ears are open at all times to be able to share. Oh, I heard this, and that actually relates to that discussion we had the other day.
Yeah, that's right. There's nothing worse than a client feeling like they've got to repeat themselves back because we haven't bothered to come in and update, one of our colleagues. So, really wearing the business's hat, and it's when you are visiting a client, you are all about temp and perm. You are all about whatever the service offerings are of that business, and you're all about the team. So it's not just about the consultant. It's, for us, it's our clients know who can help them, temp and perm wise. And most of the time, we're huge advocates on, if you go out to a client visit, take somebody with you, unless there could be a really missed opportunity.
No, it's brilliant. Like, do you have, sorry, I want to move on to the next, but this is interesting. In terms of like rituals, we call it rituals at work. We always stand up and discuss the day's problems or the week's problems, the week's objectives. Do you have rituals in these kind of pairings or teams on a weekly to talk through? Or I guess it's like a weekly whip you might have with your manager or something.
Yeah, we do. We absolutely have the weekly whip. We also celebrate, and I don't know, there may be people out there who have, for example, billing managers. Sorry, I lost my earpiece. may have people out there that are, billing managers, one sitting in temp, one sitting in perm. There's opportunity at that level to collaborate and create rituals. So, for example, when the temp consultant's feeling like it's, one step forward, two steps back, they're placing great temps, the client's saying, fantastic, I now want them permanently. How do you change that from being area of, gee, it's good they've got a perm role, but I've lost a temp here. Like, how as a business do you celebrate those things? What are the rituals? We certainly do weekly huddles, but we also have a very open plan office. So we have 2 hours of collaboration on things like account management, so where the temp and perm consultants are coming together. And that's every Tuesday afternoon. It's a ritual. We play a song loudly in the office to bring us all together to go, stop what you're doing. It's time to come together to talk about our clients and how we can work with them in a more constructive and proactive and value-adding way.
Yeah, well, it's a really rosy picture you're painting. It's obviously all dead easy to do, no problems at all. So I think it moves us nicely on to this kind of like there's some more of the nitty gritty, right, of the differences and how you maintain a temp desk, but how you also maintain profitability, how you maintain your business in light of bringing more on, because your liabilities grow in sense of, especially if you're there, your employees and you're paying them. And I think it moves on to how do we maintain that balance? So if we look at that, I'd love to hear, and this is kind of where Danny, I know you'll want to come and discuss this, because this is really the sensitivities around, oh yeah, this sounds great, let's take on the temp work for this company as well. But then you suddenly realize, oh, I've got payroll to me. I've got to look after this desk, not just from a client relationship, candidate relationship, but actually financially look after this and make sure which is a key part of the client and candidate experience, right? So I guess my question initially for you is, what are the biggest pressure points you feel, and how do you manage those when it comes to these kind of, I guess, the financial part of this?
Sorry, Tom, was that for Danny or myself?
I'll say to Sally. Sorry, I'll do that, and then we'll jump into Danny. We've got many an idea on this.
You're on a roll, Sally.
Yeah, look, thanks, Danny. You need to be across your numbers. And I think Greg and Angela in the last session really touched on this in understanding your financials. Also being really realistic in terms of your, what are you, if they talked about dabbling in temp and to really shy away from dabbling, my view is you're all in. So dabbling, there's a lot of risk areas. So it's not just financial, there's brand risks that you need to consider. And there's also, risk around ultimately the temps are your employees. So you need to ensure that you understand the work environments that they're working in. So when we're looking at that, you need to factor in compliance and the different support that you're going to wrap around, regardless of whether it's a dual desk consultant or an individual temp consultant. You need to look at what are the differences and really think about financially as well. And I'll leave this to Danny to talk to, but as a business owner, constantly looking at margins, opportunities. So, you know, if you're being given a great opportunity, it might sound great, but you've got to make sure you're actually able to make a good margin on it to be profitable. Don't just get caught up in they need 20 temps and they've told me this is what the margin is. It's like do your own due diligence and calculations. And I know Danny's got it on his list to talk more about, but terms of business is really critical around payment terms, etc.
Yeah, and Danny, I'm fascinated because you'll have all kinds of stories of the people you've worked with in establishing viable business, I guess. You've got at the point of qualification for a role or taking on a client, there's a certain viability, and you must see many examples of that's just not a viable way to approach your business from a financial point of view.
Yeah, look, there's a few parts to it. I mean, firstly, well, there's a range of set of numbers that you need to keep an eye on. But what do you bill? What do you bill out? How do you quote? Very, very different on a perm via temp business. The direct costs related to your temp and contractor business are highly relevant to where you should be price pointing, not just the competitive landscape. So understand, I guess, your billing parameters. I'm sure you get that really clear in your business, Sally, as far as, you know, managing that the consultants have minimum thresholds they have to meet and have to cover off the direct costs related to those billings. So different cost structures in the various areas of the business. Definitively perm v temp, very, very different cost structures. So you just need to be mindful of what those cost structures are and definitely cater for those when you're, I guess, quoting on the jobs that you do. And I guess that relates to the margin comment that was sort of brought up just before. Understand your costs so you can work out that you can actually take on business that's going to make you money. You know, just the net amount that you pay your employees on the temp side is not your cost. There's on costs, other direct costs you need to factor in. So you need to be aware of those and be eyes open about the all up costs that are incurred in creating that opportunity to provide temps to your customers. Pretty basic for those who know it, very foreign for those that don't.
Which is, you know, that key, and this is so kind of foundational to if you want to move into this world of dual desk, to move into more temping businesses, understanding, hey, okay, I'm starting to do this, but there's some numbers I need to get across. And yeah, I mean, sometimes you might go, yeah, but it's foundational business metrics. You need to just make money, right? But I think the nuance of great business comes in understanding that there's certain business you need to take on initially in order to grow your business, right? I guess, Sally, when you started taking on temp business, I don't know how you looked at it. You're like, well, I need to grow this, so I need to take some risk. There's a certain element of risk early days that you set in. I don't know how you.
Yeah, that's right. I think most people will have stories of risk where they've really had to back themselves. I think if you educate yourself as best you can and ask other people, and we've got a great industry, there's plenty of, like today, there's plenty of opportunities to ask questions of others and collaborate. You know, learn as much as you can, ask a lot of good questions. But in terms of that risk, Danny made some really great points there. It's not, there are so many other costs. So if you are looking to, even if you're a temp business now and looking to move into another sector, understand what are the nuances in those sectors, because sometimes it'll be things like, oh, sorry, we don't pay for 30 days till 30 days after end of month. And you might be a business that's used to 7 days after invoicing. So those sorts of things as a business leader can really bring you unstuck if you're not across those things.
There's so much to it. And I think that's an interesting piece you just touched on, which is that industry and picking your home industry, so to speak, you come from maybe. If you said that's where you started and moving naturally through, because you understand the language the client speaks, but also the nuance. And as you move into temp, there's so much more related to those roles and potentially the compliance side of things, and definitely the pay.
Yeah,
go for it, Danny.
I was just going to say, I think the comment that Sally made earlier about you can't just dabble in temp and contracting. There's so much you need to know and so many partners you need to bring on board and so many structures and infrastructure that you need to build. Whether it be in-house or outsourced, that's fine. You don't necessarily have to bring all the capability in-house, but you need to have it in some form or fashion. and it's not just something you can really wing. You really need to go in eyes open, or it could be reasonably disastrous.
That's right. And Denny, we talked the other day about the tech stack and the importance of that. So if your expectation is that you're going to commence dual desk, my first thing would be about really recognizing that they are two completely different workflows that require different moments in time, different milestones to be reached. It's a big ask for your consultant. And I don't know about everybody else online, but I know for me, finding fabulous consultants and retaining them is absolutely priority for me as a business owner. So I want to make sure that my consultants are happy, they're loving their role, and that they have the support to deliver the consulting skills. I don't want to see them become payroll experts or chasing timesheets or learning the intricacies of tech stacks. So wrapping around your support, around your consultants so they can be consulting and recruiting, to me is a really key fundamental of running a successful business.
Yes, it sounds like there's a commitment to people as part of this. I think it's wonderful. That's what it's all about. But taking this on and going all in and absolutely understanding it, dead on, spot on. Did you at the time hire in, finance? Did you hire in specific skills at the time to take this on, or did you just sort of upskill? What was your thinking? All in, I presume you probably went, we need some dedicated skills in here.
Yeah, so we already had finance and we had a really successful standalone temporary division to our business, and we still have that today. But when we tried to really merge particularly specialised areas, we knew that we needed our support to be, we needed that to look differently. So we went and reviewed the support that we had at hand. We really looked at redesigning and editing their position descriptions. So we had support that was sitting in two people in a pool providing support across the business, but we really needed to bolster up. People would naturally go to one for some temp more centric questions and the other for perm. So we separated them out and we bolstered up the learning and development in training. So if you think about things like backup payroll, being able to use your probity check online systems. We didn't need our perm support consultant to know those things. So again, there's an element of duplication for if one's away, but we didn't want those tasks being duplicated weekly. So really looking at getting great value out of your support, and it's better for them because they know what's expected of them and where, what they're there to do and deliver.
Magic. I'm going to move on. I realize I'm a couple of slides behind, but I'm going to move on to this kind of topic. Hot topic, right? We've kind of covered the base. We covered how we manage a team, how do we grow that desk, how do we establish practices and cadences and meeting rituals, etc. I love that because it's all about how do you get the human. Then it gets down to the hard side of things, right? Got to make sure your policies, your processes, your money is in place to make sure all of that works. And I think definitely something we talked about recently, and Danny, big area for you, and how can businesses set themselves up for success to basically make sure that they can pay all of these temps that you're bringing on board, right? So I'm interested, Danny, in, I guess, some of your recommendations in this space. How should they approach understanding, once they've got this, they've gone all in on temp, and then they're going, well, what if when I'm doing my numbers, I'm doing my forecasting, I'm going from 10 temps to 100 temps. I'm getting quite nervous about if they're all out at the same time. That's a lot of money I've got to make sure I bring in, and my perms, that's risky. I can't rely on that to pay my temp, right? So I'm interested in some of those kind of insights you have in how you could recommend and what recommendations you might have in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all those questions is pretty much spot on. And if you just look at it higher level, it's be in tune to ask yourself those questions. You need to understand how the cash flows in your business. Depending on the type of business that you do, and this isn't just recruitment services, it's any type of business, cash flow is critical. cash flow is king, all that. It's all true and correct. You need the cash to be able to pay your outgoings when they're due. It just happens to be a lot tighter when you're actually managing a payroll and you've got no leeway on paying your people on time. You must be paid on time, as opposed to like an importing business who can drag out their suppliers, wait for cash to come in. You don't have that luxury. So you really need to be in tune and fully understand the cash flows, in and outflows, how they work in your business. And it's really not just separating it into the big baskets of perm and temp, but what are your billing arrangements? What are your cash flows on the incoming side? Even on the perm side, they're very different cash inflows. Do you offer retained, where you might get some money up front, or you're working on a contingent basis, and you're more going to be skewed to more of a negative cash flow type scenario? So really get in tune and understand that, focus on that, improve the timing of your cash flows as best as you can, pull the levers that you can to get the cash in as early as possible. Pretty normal stuff. But on the other side, on the outflow side, obviously there's a very different cost structure, direct cost structure between perm and temp. You've still got people working, you've still got your permanent employees that you need to factor in for your payroll and timing and all that. So you need to obviously be aware of all that, factor all that in. I wouldn't say it's easier, but it's different and probably less complex than when you've got rolling payroll to be managed and paid on the temp side. So you just need to be really aware that you may possibly be able to create a positive cash flow environment if you're just running a perm business. You may be able to structure your billings and structure your payroll and your overheads in a way that you might be able to use the incoming cash to pay your outgoings as and when they're due. I've never seen that happen on the temp side. I've never seen anyone be able to get paid before they have to pay their payroll. And in the 10 years that we've been going across hundreds and hundreds of businesses. So if you can't use the transactional cash flow to pay your people, then you've got to get that cash from somewhere else within the business or somewhere external. But you need to have a generating cash flow to be able to close the gap. And that gap's only going to get bigger where you're going to pay your people quicker and offer extended terms. So you need to be really wary and cautious as to the levers that impact the timings of your cash flow. So are you payrolling your people weekly, or can you stretch it out to fortnightly? We've seen monthly. What terms are you offering your customers? Weekly, fortnightly, we've seen 90, 120 days. Obviously, the timing and the magnitude of the cash that's required to plug that gap will impact the amount of cash you need access to. So, real key is to be mindful and aware and manage it closely, but then have the structures in place to make sure that you can meet the commitments as and when they're due according to the cash flow cycles that you're experiencing. I guess probably just to finish that off, outside of just the levers, but be really wary of the risks that can impact your cash flow. So not only when will you get paid, but will you get paid at all? So make sure you've got your terms of business really tight that we touched on earlier, Sally, and make sure that the invoices you're raising are in line with what terms you've been engaged under and that you can enforce payment of those invoices, but also make sure that you're dealing with customers who can't afford to pay. Set up structures, work with partners who can assess the, viability of the customers that you're dealing with as you set up and grow this business, because it's an investment. When you're taking on the payroll commitment to roll out a temp business, you're investing into growing that business. You're actually putting real cash out. You need to make sure that real cash is coming in.
No, mate, thank you so much, Danny. I think there's so many nuggets and useful insights in that. And Sally, it makes me just go, well, what have you experienced recently with regards to our clients, our candidates expecting difference at the moment? I think what I'm getting to is you want the candidates to join your agency. You want to onboard them, become employees, and they're going to want a certain level of service. So you need to be kind of offering the best in practice. And Danny touched on weekly, fortnightly, monthly, and you're going to have to balance that candidate expectation of, I just worked this week, I want to get paid for that week. You go, sorry, we're moving you. And then they're like, well, I'm leaving to go to that agency because they're saying they can pay me weekly.
Yeah.
What have you seen in that space?
I haven't seen anything where a business has held out a candidate for monthly payroll or what have you, but maybe I'm in a bubble. But certainly, look, for us, payroll is critical every week. You can't get it wrong and you can never be late. You automatically lose, credibility and trust with client and candidate. So for me, as a business owner, you're responsible to ensure that your business is viable and can pay all employees, all debtors, etc. So it's, what Danny's talking to is like really important, like getting across those numbers. What is your cost of sale? I bring it back to consultant education. Everybody, I believe, most people go to work to do a great job. So if they know they've got clients that are behind, in terms of payment, talk to them about it, because your consultant is often the one that's ringing them that day or out on site. So if they know there's a problem, they can bring it up and consult around that. Denny made a really good point when we had our chat last week, and it was around like, let's start how we want to finish. And that is, have the terms of business conversation. Often as a consultant, we're so focused on getting the job in, the terms of business become a thing that we just need signed off because we're excited to recruit the role and to work with that client. But we really just need to take a quick breath and actually read, go through the terms of business your company has with the client. Or often there's probably a lot of people out there saying, well, actually, we're in a position where we have some clients that will dictate that, and I totally understand that. We have that too. So you have to sit down and really understand what are those dictated terms, and they're often around payment. And what Danny's talking about is being like ensuring your business is able to sustain those payment terms, because if you can't, it's not good business.
I use the analogy, Sally, that giving payment terms is like lending your customer money. Especially when you're providing temps and you're payrolling them, you're putting out money as a lend to your customer, and you're giving them terms of payment to pay you back. So there's a couple of things. Obviously, the timing issue. So the timing issue, the time cost of money, what's that costing you in real time while your money is out the door and you're waiting to get paid? But also, what's the risk? Have you actually assessed that lending arrangement? Have you assessed that you're putting out money, essentially lending them money? Can they afford to pay it back?
Spot on. Yeah, exactly the conversations we have, and we don't get to charge an interest rate or anything on that money lent out for that time. So, but for most of us, it is costing us significantly to actually support that client who might want those extended terms or be a late payer.
When we talk about, I think it was a really hot topic, the terms, and making sure when you bring on a new client or even renewing I guess you probably go through 12-month renewals to discuss the contract with the client. And I'm also interested, Sally, when you're working with a client from a perm and temp, how are you, when you put these terms forward for them, are you splitting that up? Are you combining it as an agreement? How do you work with that? And then what's the kind of best practice you do there?
Best practice for us is to have those independent of one another, so it's really clear. But you also need to ensure that they talk to one another. So when we talk about a temp conversion to perm, that your terms cover that off and are really clear. So there's nothing to muddy a water at the end of your consultant managing a great temp for 12 months that now goes permanent, and there's a surprise for the client. So and vice versa. So it's really we have them separated out because they're billed out completely differently. Margin calculation, hourly rates, minimums, etc., versus a percentage of whether it's stages or however you're structured. They are very separate offerings in our business. So we have those terms set out in that same way.
And I'm interested as whether you put sort of a gatekeeping point on terms before a consultant's allowed to work with. Is there any kind of point where you go, well, we can't do any work, we won't begin any activity until we have assigned terms? Or is there some flex in that?
I'd love to say yes, and we should all have that. But often, as a lot of people hopefully are laughing along with me, going the rapid fire sometimes around go, go, go. So it's important you don't get too far down the track, and I'm talking like a day or two. Sometimes we just need to jump on to getting into it because of timing. But importantly, we understand why there's a delay from our client. So, or new client. If it's a new client, it's like all my senses are much more honed to, needing to have those checks and balances. But it's really important to engage with your finance. Also, often we will hear about different clients from, other consultants and things like that. So if there's ever in doubt, I mean, I think importantly, just start with, you always got to think about it. Is this an organisation that we'd like to do business with? Not all business is good business. So again, as a leader, you've got to make those decisions and weigh up the risk.
Wow, there's so much we've covered.
One of the overlooked things that we often see is a number of businesses don't actually know the entity that they're dealing with. So one of the things that gets made transparent is in engaging in terms is you actually have their ABN on the term, so you know who the entity is that you're dealing with. If you don't know who you're dealing with, you can't really check their background or anything, or their capacity to pay. So it's really important to know who you're dealing with and the legal entity, that in the case where that you knew who to recover the money owed to you from.
Yeah, great point, Denny. And that's that engaging with your internal finance, making sure they've got that on a checklist for a new client. Our terms certainly have a spot for them, that to be on there. It would be flagged if it was not filled out. We'd all pause and jump onto that straight away. Yeah, really important because, unfortunately, a lot of these things are learnt from not having those things in place. So hopefully it can save someone a bit of pain.
Absolutely. And one other point there, Tom, just before I don't know if you're finishing up on the cash flow side, was if you're a perm recruiter looking to get into temp, you need to be very clear that it's a cash flow negative environment that I touched on. So you're going to need a cash flow solution. So if you're averse to taking out some sort of funding, then potentially temp is not the way to go for you. You need to be really clear that you can make money, gross margin or profit, and cash are very different issues. So you can run a profitable business, but maybe cash flow short because of this trading cycle that you have to deal with. You have to put the money out before you get paid. So don't see the cash flow timing as a negative issue. It's just part and parcel of running a temp desk.
It's a great point. Thank you for that. I think I want to move on to this final piece, which is talking about the kind of tools and how do we use the right tech and the right solutions to power that, because I realize it's now coming up to 22. We've got to cover this, and then I'd love to show you guys a little bit the Temp Express solution that talks actually to a lot of what we cover, which is great. So Sally, I know you utilize, so there's a whole load of things you need in order to run this business. The ATS is pretty foundational, I hope, and I know you use JobAdder, so I hope you love using JobAdder, and if not, let's chat afterwards and see if we can make you love it.
Yeah, look, Tom, in terms of our tech stack, JobAdder is we call it our source of truth. So it's our anchor. So we try and build our solution on, as we've grown over the years, we've realised the importance of trying to not have disparate systems, because when you have disparate systems, there's opportunity for things to fall through the cracks or not engage and not connect and things to go wrong. So, and also from a productivity and seamless, we're always looking for seamless integration for our end user, whether that's an external candidate temp or whether it's a client signing terms of business with our online signing. It's a myriad of things, payroll, timesheeting, those sorts of things. So for us, that tech stack was really critical and something we work really hard on. And it's not just set and forget. We review all the time. If something's not working, we figure it out, and we talk to the people that can actually advise and guide us. So it's like you can never kind of hang your hat and say, that's done now, I don't need to worry about that. And I would encourage, I am a JobAdder user and we do love it. I would encourage people to also give feedback to JobAdder. So if there's things that, when we were looking at the opportunity tab, we were all on the inbox, logging tickets and sharing, this is great, but can we have this? It'd be awesome if it could do that. So again, we're the end user for that tech. So let's work collaboratively to continue to evolve it to what we need as a user and what our clients and candidates need.
That's great. And we try and listen to everything. I promise we do. And it's fast. We love hearing into that nuance. The detail of the flows is critical. And how do you make systems? Because they need to do the work for you, not you doing the work into the system. Our goal is to help recruiters be better at what they do, and the system should just enable that and help businesses do better business, not do more business in a sense. It's kind of, yes, do more business, but be better first, and that will naturally come with more business.
Yeah. And Tom, if you're going to invest in the tech, spend the time to integrate it into all parts of your business. So look at those workflows, the candidate journey, the client journey, and figure out where are all the touch points where the system can support. We've been absolutely in positions before and where we've bought tech and it's all great, we do the demo, but we don't actually integrate it well. So it sort of becomes pointless then. So really, as I said, there's not a day that I've said, okay, I can hang my hat on it, the tech stack's all done and great. There's always opportunity. I think that's the exciting thing. There's always that opportunity to continue to look and grow it, and how can we do things in a different way that's going to add value.
Well, I'm finding people in the business who've got the curiosity to constantly question a process. There's always that. Who are the people that are going, hey, we could probably, 10 minutes, we could probably stop that process, update that. Yeah. You need to look for those people always, because they're always the ones who are kind of constantly pushing you forward, making you think.
That's right. Yeah, we've actually started an internal committee here at People Fusion for exactly that. They're the inquisitive, the ones that are like, why are we doing it this way? So they have an hour every Friday to just come together with a Monday board and figure out, and everybody in the business can put suggestions on there. Notice this was clunky. What can we review this? And it's just like chipping away at maintaining that innovation, and the team love it because everyone can get involved.
Yeah, I love that, and I think encouraging more questioning of existing processes is perfect anyway. Right?
Yeah.
And I just saw it yesterday, and I'll be quick, but you get lots of forms in recruitment. Everyone knows we actually have a smart form product, but we see some coming in and they're 300 questions long, and it's like, oh, I think maybe people should ask the question of, do you need to have it all in one gigantic, verbose document for some poor candidate to fill in? It's always building that culture of question and change to improve the business is great. And
spot on. Yeah, ease of doing business. Are we easy to do business with? And recently, as a review, myself and my business partner jumped onto our own portal and actually registered as a candidate. We were extremely surprised at things that we'd set up and thought were a great idea 2 and 3 years ago, no longer served us well.
Yeah, and it reverses with your client experience again, and it comes back to pay. What is the experience of your user? Like, we think about it in building software all the time. Who's the experience of the user? Everything we do, someone has to fill out. So it's constantly questioning those touch points and going, we can be smarter about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, I think I hope we've covered a lot there. I kind of wanted to recap, but we've done a lot. We talked about the people side, and I love that. I do love that part of this story, is how do you get your teams working together? And Sally, you told some great discussions of what kind of rituals you put in place. We then, I think, talked about the kind of, how do we set up the right workflows? How do we put the right policies in place? How do we set up our finance structures and understand finance structures to make sure we're in a place and please jump in and shout if I'm not covering the right pieces here. And Danny talked to some of those absolutely foundational financial numbers that you just need to understand. And you've got to go all in and accept that you're going to be, Danny, please paraphrase me, you're going to be cash flow negative here.
Cash flow negative, yep.
In order to run a successful temp. Like that's a really good, to understand and be comfortable with that. And you're going to be profitable, your margins will be good, but you need to make sure you understand what that means and be comfortable running that business and understanding that. And I think that's so important and such a different perspective than a perm, a contingent model, where, or even a lovely retained model where you're billing invoices throughout the process and you're actually bringing money up front. It's harder to do, very different. And then finally, look, I wanted to say, look, with that, setting your business up for success is all sorts of understanding your process, understanding your people, teaching your people, educating them, whilst bringing in those experts who understand the domains to bring you that kind of great client and candidate experience and consultant experience, and I guess business owner experience, to make sure it all works. So that sort of summarized, we think we've got most of that stuff in my summary there.
Covered off nicely. Yeah.
Done well, Tom.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, it's a bit. I hope everybody was able to take something from that, but there were so many fun points that I'd love to dive in longer. Sally, Danny, maybe we'll just take another one. Let's get have a drink. Look, I think I need to move forward because I think my team's going to be like, come on, Tom. So coming soon, I think this is my chance to go, hey, by the way, there's some fun things. And I did, because actually we touched on terms, we touched on compliance, we touched on the ability for teams to understand what their talent pools are if you're a perm, and how does that work? And interestingly, funnily enough, we have been listening to a huge amount over the time. Can you see that, Danny? I think you're all good and you can see my screen. Our Temp Express module, this is a dedicated dashboard that helps those working on temp roles and those working with your temps and your contractors to see who you've got booked on jobs, who's working actively on jobs, who's finishing, the idea that they're up and finishing in the next 4 weeks, and those people who have just finished and it's ended the last 365, and I can try and rinse repeat. That's our goal with this, is to try and help. But critically, if you look at this, if I go into my working, we've got this concept of compliance. Like, it's so important and it's such a time saver to make sure that we understand that that custom field credit status on this company record for McDonald's has not been approved. And there's an account query here going, hey, Tom, hey, Dom. Danny, you might recognize that name as an AFL player. Weird alternate name for me. Please, can we arrange a credit check? But again, we can build that into your flows and your processes to help you set your business and set your desk up for success, to make sure that they're thinking about, hey, you can work, but you're going to need to, before you get to put this person on a job, we need to know that this customer is going to pay us some money at some point in the future. And you can think about that from the ABN checks. Have we done that? Have we got that against the record? Then you could say, have we made sure we've covered the medicals and put those compliance checks in? So this is really all about making it really easy for me to either communicate with a candidate and send them some quick messages, or I can go and say, right, well, you're finishing up pretty soon. Why don't I send the client an email about employee kind of evaluation, a little survey to say, how's this temp done? And they fill in a form. It's that we want to make it easy, super easy for those consultants to do the best job they can. And that's everything we've done in this. And I haven't even touched on the talent pool, which I really should, because that's our beta that's it's going out at the moment. We've got a few customers. It's not live yet. We're just doing some work on it. But this is basically, if you look at this working temps closed, it's taking this concept and building it out into a proper pool of talent, not search, proper pool of talent that says these are available people who've worked with us previously, who've worked on placements recently, that I can look and I can see Frodo's already booked. Frodo. Then I can look at unavailable. I can see Abby, Ashal, and Alex are finishing soon, so I can follow with up quickly. So our goal here is to make it so easy for you to see the right people in your database to contact quickly. And this is just the beginnings. We've got all kinds of ideas to make, talent pools across the business from different departments. And then this concept of what is a talent pool from a BD perspective? Well, it's not. It's about marketing right. It's about surfacing the right data in your database to tell you, contact these people because you'll get business, or you need to contact them to maintain that relationship. So it's all about instant visibility. You don't have to click anything. It's all that stuff. So I've sort of done a very, very quick overview there. I hope that sort of made sense. What do you think, Sally, Danny? Sally, your team hopefully have interrogated, had a look at it. And if not, why?
They have. They've had it's all installed and have been having a play. And I know they did an online webinar or little training module on a first glance at it. But I'm like really excited. I love the visual where you can easily see who's booked, who's finishing, where are we at. And the importance, why I had a little smile as you're talking, is coming back to ensuring that the data that's going into JobAdder is right. So finish dates are up to date and things like that. So quality data in means, you know, quality user experience.
And that's the hardest part of any system, is getting the right data in at the right time and making sure your journey. And I spoke when we talked about that question, your process piece, is what's the data journey? What do you need from a client? What do you need from a candidate from the beginning, right at the beginning, all the way through to the end and rework with that person? And don't it's a journey. Don't force them to give you everything when you don't need everything. And then, but make sure the team know, well, why do we need that bit of data? Do we really need that bit of data? And why does it help us help that candidate's career or help that client's business? So that systems like this can work and reveal the right things for you. Because my view as building product is we have to make it as delightful and so irresistible as possible to use, and make sure that data is captured in the background so you will know you're optimized and doing the right thing. Because if you're just putting features in front of people that actually aren't giving me enough value, I'm not going to put the data in, and then we fail. There's a whole point of having these in place. But yeah, that's a quick insight into the Temp Express world. So hopefully those people watching got some sort of insight there. And Danny, I hope that sort of blew your socks off.
That looks awesome. True JobAdder user-friendly nature.
That's the goal. That's the goal. But we're getting all kinds of feedback at the moment because there's so many things people want now. They're seeing it. They're like, oh, I need to be able to, I want to filter that list by this. And I want to change it by that. And I want my own saved search for that talent pool. Like, yep. On it. Okay, so let me jump back. I'm sort of, let's get back to this. Questions. Now, let's see if we've got any questions online. I don't think I have got any questions that I can see. Oh, here we do have one here. Question for Sally. Did you have any pushback from your consultants when you told them that you were going dual desk? And how did you handle that?
Yeah, great question. We definitely did. And it was around things like, how do I prioritize? Like if I've got that immediate need for temp, which we need to respond, versus I've got a very planned out way in which I'm working through this permanent recruit. So for us, we had to really pull that apart and make sure that we all understood that. We also had pushback in the space of, well, hang on a minute, but when my incentive kicks in as a perm recruiter and now you're asking me to do temp, how does that work? Or how do we split these fees? So there was, and that's why, you know, policy, I mentioned that around like, how do we do business here internally was really important. Whilst there were questions, I wouldn't say pushback. We were very lucky at the time, and a reminder that the time that we went into this was in a really unknown state for all of us. So during the pandemic, so it was everyone was willing to give it a go. So we were very fortunate in that space. But definitely the questions that were asked, I think the important piece was we listened to them, and interestingly, those questions that were asked, you know, sort of circle around a year and a half's time were what actually made us go back to our original full circle position of splitting them back out. And it was things around those recognition that there were two really different workflows in what were really busy desks. So again, I think I know my preference is around the split out desk, but that's based on what my business and clients needs, and that's different for all of us. So I think if you are considering it, definitely consult with your consultants and really listen, and before you make the decision, try and really tackle what those questions and think about them in reality playing out in your business.
Wonderful, thank you. I have one more question, and it could be to either of you. But what criteria? Let's go with, I guess, Sally. What criteria do you suggest to follow when assessing the risk of taking on a new client?
Yeah, things like we look at, it's not just all about, you know, payment terms and terms of business. When we assess a client, we also look at what is their retention rate, right? Like, does it fit with our, are we excited to recruit for them? Can we see there's some businesses that we know have had poor retention because they're going through change. So for us, we would go and we would like to understand before we progress forward, how is that business addressing those issues? And if we can see that they are making that effort to do so, then they would be somebody that we'd be willing to work with. So it's not just about terms of business, but it's also about understanding the ecosystem surrounding that client around, you know, staff retention, values, and really we want to make sure that when we're recommending an organisation, that we, you know, we're really proud to do that, and our consultants are.
Thank you, Sally. Another great answer. Do you actually? There's one other question. Let's see. I'm not sure if it's come through, but do you put a formula, kind of a set of questions for the consultants? Do you help prompt them, or do they go in just trained to ask these questions?
Yeah, look, we run lunch and learns about all different things like this because it's a good reminder for all of us. So I think keeping it fresh with lunch and learns once a month or something like that is really good, and have these sorts of things on your agenda for each year to make sure that there's that constant refresher. But we do in our, and this is, we haven't had this all the time, we've had to build and evolve ourselves, but really building out our templates. So internally on SharePoint, building out that templated library so that, you know, if people haven't had to negotiate terms or haven't had to think about outside of the terms of business document, what are the other things that are important for People Fusion to know to make a good decision on, are they a client that we want to work with? So it's important to have that sort of checklist for your consultants, because, you know, in our business we have, you know, specialist consultants and senior consultants, then we have consultants with that sort of 2 to 5 year experience, and then we have associates coming up. So we want to make sure that we're able to have documents that are tools that they all can use. And, you know, it just ensures that the integrity of data going into the system as well, those checkpoints along the way are being met, and that they've got that support. They're not just relying on somebody to tell them what to do. They've actually got it there, as this is the way we do things here.
Magic. And continue to review and iterate.
Absolutely, yeah, very important.
I think we're just about ready to wind up, and so I'll say thank you. Look, I want to say thank you to Sally. I want to say thank you to Danny. That was really insightful. Danny, I hope I gave you enough. I mean, there was so many gold nuggets coming from Sally. It was like, this is wonderful. But thank you for your insights, and hopefully everyone listening got some value out of that. If you're an existing JA user, go and check out Temp Express. You can find it in your menu on the left-hand side of the bottom, called Temp Express. If you're new to JA, reach out to us, and I'm sure we can give you a free demo on Temp Express and the whole platform. And also check out A Positive, the workforce finance and payroll management experts, Danny, specializing in cash flow funding for recruitment, labor hire, and professional services. Please do, because the service Danny gives the industry is invaluable. So thank you, Danny, for everything you do to support the community. There'll be a prompt to complete a short survey at the end of this webinar, so please give us your feedback. Love feedback. But thank you all again. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Cheers.